Shalom Avracha. The day of Rosh Hashanah is, as we know, Yom Adin. It's a day of judgment. In fact, in the writings of Chazal, of the sages, the entire day of Rosh Hashanah revolves around the judgment of Hashem, of God, upon the world in much detail. And the question, of course, is how is it that the very idea of Rosh Hashanah, the new year, and the corresponding idea of the judgment of God upon the world are unmentioned by the Torah. When we look at the Torah itself, all it says about this day is that it's a Mikra Kodesh, meaning it's a festival, and that it's a Yom Teruah. It's a day of sounding the shofar, or Zichron Teruah, the memory, remembering the sounding. What about Rosh Hashanah? What about Yom Hadin? Why are they not mentioned? But Chazal understood, and this is very explicit in the Torah, that this time of year, this period, is a time of year that heralds the end of the previous year and the beginning of a new year. That's why the Torah calls this time period Tkufat HaShana, the period of the year, or Tzeis HaShana, the end of the year. That's the time of Rosh Hashanah, of Sukkot. That's the period that we're going through. And this is definitely appropriate from an agricultural perspective. This is the time of the year when we bring in the produce from the previous year and we begin to plow the field and to plant the produce for the next year. Meaning this is exactly the time of year where we end the previous cycle and we begin a new cycle. And Chazal understood that there's a specific festival that the Torah dedicates to this idea of the new year. A time, a day. We have to choose a day. And the Torah chooses the day of the first of Tishrei, which is also the beginning of a month. Other festivals are in the middle of a month. But this is the beginning of a new month to herald, to usher in the new year. And because it's the beginning of a new year, so it's also a time of judgment. Whenever we start a new year, then we are worried, we're concerned. What's going to happen in the new year? We need to approve our budget. We need to have a framework for the year to come. That framework is approved. It's given us on this day of Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, while on the one hand, it's a day of celebration, it's a joyous day, we start a new year. On the other hand, it's a solemn day. It's a very serious day because we turn to Hashem with an expectation of receiving our framework, approving our budget, so to speak, for the new year. And that's why, according to Rabbi Eliezer, this is the time when the world was created. We say in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Harat Olam. Today, the world was conceived. The world was created. Today, because it's the new year. It's the time when we move from one year to the next. It's appropriate that this should be the time, again, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that this is when the world is created. How does the Torah represent this day? By telling us it's a Yom Teruah. It's a day of sounding the shofar. It's a day of sounding. What is a day of sounding? It's a day of crowning. That's how we crown a king. By sounding a trumpet, sounding the shofar. We crown Hashem upon us. Because when we begin the new year, what we want to do is to reset our relationship with Hashem. When we start a new year and we expect Hashem to give us the framework, the budget for the coming year, then our position vis-a-vis Hashem is one of crowning, accepting Hashem upon us as king. What does a king do? A king cares for his subjects. We turn to Hashem and we say we place our trust in you. We turn our hopes for the new year to Hashem, to the King who is benevolent, who loves his people and only wants their goodness, their betterment. And that's why the Ramchal says, he says, what is Yira? Yira, which is fear of God. It's a sentiment that is very much present in these days. In fact, the days are called Yomim Noraim, days of awe. What does that awe mean? Says the Ramchal, it means expressing hope, that we hope to Hashem. We pin our hopes, our trust in Hashem. That's the sentiment of awe that we express, that we articulate in the entire spirit of Rosh Hashanah. And with that sentiment of trusting God, of placing our hopes in Him, then we know that He will give us a judgment, a positive judgment. He will give us a framework that will have tremendous content, all of the blessing, all of the bounty, all of the goodness that He wishes us to experience for the year to come. We should all have a Shana Tova U'Masuka, a good and a sweet year, replete with the blessing of Hashem, with His bounty, and with the experience of His closeness.